All right, so yeah, go ahead and load up your program, your circle program with the value returning functions. And so go ahead and load that up and then save it. Probably the smart thing to do would be go ahead and save it with another name, and then we're going to edit it. So you'll still have your original plus the new one that we do today. So I'm going to do a different one here. Circle.
Wait, is this the circle with functions?
Yes, probably circle with functions. I'm not sure. All right, so I'm gonna edit a few things. Obviously, the comments are a little different now, so code box. So I'm gonna name this one circle program using reference parameters. I think you guys will like this. This will make this program a lot more, a little shorter and more concise, I guess. All right, does everybody have their code loaded up there? So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of some stuff. Again, make sure you save it with another name so that you don't lose your first one. So I'm going to get rid of all the calc whatever functions. So I'm just going to delete the prototypes. So I'm going to leave output results. We can still use that one. And then down here I'm just going to delete all the function definitions. All the prototypes except for output results. So I'm getting rid of all the other functions except output results. So output results, the function definition for output results is still there. And then the prototype for output results is still there. And then leave the call for output results, but get rid of all the other function calls. Yeah. Does everybody see what I did? So again, I got rid of all the prototypes except output results.
And the function calls?
And I got rid of all the function calls except output results. And I got rid of all the function definitions except output results. I bet that'd actually run. Yeah, so we can type in a radius, and obviously we get either zeros or garbage values for everything because we're not actually calculating anything at this point. Interesting. All right. So is everybody got that? So now instead of writing 5 different functions to calculate each of the things like the diameter, circumference, area, sphere surface area, and sphere volume, let's write one function that calculates everything. Okay. And so go down after main. It doesn't matter where you put it as long as it's outside of all of the functions. Remember, it's the function calls that determine the order in which the functions get executed. But I'm going to put it right out in between main and output results. I'm going to make this a void function. Technically, you could have a function that returned a value and also accepted reference parameters. You can do both. But usually I would suggest, choose one approach or the other. Don't try to mix them unless the situation calls for that. So I'm going to make this a void function. Let's just name it calcStuff. So I used uppercase S there, calcStuff. And I'm going to send in all these parameters, except I'm going to send all of them in by reference except for the radius. So I'll put the radius first. So double space radius. So that one's being passed by value. If there's no ampersand, it's passed by value. And then double ampersand diameter, like that. So by simply putting that ampersand there, that means that this one's going to be passed by reference. And then double ampersand circumference, comma, I'll go down the next line, double ampersand area, double ampersand sphere surface area. I'll go down another line, double ampersand sphere volume. You could probably fit them all on one line, but since I have my font real big there. Is that everything? Did I forget something? I think that's it. So I passed them in by reference, except for the radius. And so now all I have to do is just put my calculations, my assignment statements down here that calculate all of my stuff. Just put them down here. So diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. Circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. Area is equal to pi times pal radius comma 2 pi r squared, right? Sphere surface area is equal to is it 4 times pal radius comma 2, 4 pi r squared, and sphere volume is equal to 4.0 divided by 3.0 thirds pi 4/3 times pi times radius cubed. And then we still have to do the prototype and the call for that. But that's a lot easier, isn't it? Yes, thank you. I thought I screwed something up. 4 times pi times radius squared. Thank you. 4 pi r squared. And you know, technically, you don't have to use those same names. Like, you know, if you had decided to be lazy like we were in output results and just name them R, D, C, A, and so forth, you can still do that. You can use different names there. And if you do that, then, for example, D would refer back to diameter. You can still do that. C would refer back to circumference and so forth. One thing important to note is that here in a few minutes when we write the function call that makes it skip down to there, we need to make sure that we're really careful and we list all of our parameters in the same consistent order, right? So we need to make sure that we send them in the same order. If you mess up, then you could easily find yourself in a situation where you've got something. Suppose you'd put in your function call, suppose you call calcStuff and you list out radius, circumference, diameter, and like that. Then suddenly you would have circumference referring back to diameter back in main, and diameter would refer back to circumference or something weird like that if you messed up the order. It's not smart enough to match them up or anything like that. All right. So does everybody have this?
What was that he said?
Oh, I was just saying that when you write your function call here in a few minutes, make sure that you list your variables out in the same order. Because if you don't, then it's gonna go by order. So if you'd put like radius in your function call, if you put radius, circumference, and then diameter, the circumference would refer back to diameter, and diameter would refer back to circumference or something weird like that. All right. So that's that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did a thing.
What's that?
I did a thing. I know what.
All right. Of course, you probably don't have this to start off with or anything, right? Since I don't think you were here on Tuesday. You want me to look at it?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't. Everything else.
All right. So let's do the prototype. So again, we could just simply copy and paste the heading and add a semicolon, and that's all we really have to do for our prototype. I'm gonna go up here. I'm feeling like typing, so I'm gonna type it. I'm gonna go ahead and type it. So I'm gonna say void calcStuff, and so technically you don't have to put names in your prototype. You can always put names, that's fine, but technically you don't have to put names, but you have to put everything else, including the ampersand if you're passing by reference. So the first one is by value, second one by reference. So I think there were 5 by reference there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by reference, like that. And this has to be consistent with what you have down there. So here I've got first by value and then 5 doubles by reference. That has to be consistent with what I've got down in my heading. If it's not consistent, then when you go to call it later, you'll probably get an error on that. Okay. And then let's write our function call. So we need to put that function call before we output the results and after we've gotten the radius, right? So I'll put it here. And it's a void function, so there's no return value to do anything with. So you just put calcStuff, and then in the function calls, you only put names. In function calls, you only put names, no data types, no ampersands or anything like that. So radius, and I've noticed that both Dev C++ and code blocks have a nice little feature when you start typing. It'll kind of remind you about what your parameter lists look like, so you can use that to try to minimize mistakes. Like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's your call for calcStuff. And because we put the ampersands on everything except the radius, all those will be passed by reference. So when I change them down in calcStuff, those changes, it'll be changing the originals back here in main because they refer back to those. It's like the diagram, wherever that was. It's like that. But if you didn't put the ampersands, each one of these things over here would be getting its own copy. And you'd be changing the copies. You'd be changing the copies, not the original. So let's try it. After you get the call, then if all goes well, everything should work. So enter the radius of a circle. So whatever you want to put there, you know. For some reason, I've been using 5 a lot. And so read 5 into the radius. Set the radius and the memory addresses for all the others down to calcStuff. Did all the calculations. And then called output results, which we already had. And that outputted our results to the screen. So how'd that go? Just to illustrate further what I was saying, and you don't need to do this. This is how we want it right here, okay? So don't change yours. But again, what if I had not put the ampersands there? Well, first of all, what if I don't have some ampersands on my prototype, but I've got them down in my heading, and I try to compile? I get errors, right? Because it's not consistent. It'll say something like undefined reference to calcStuff, because up here I said calcStuff was going to have a certain setup in the parameter list, and down there it's different. So they don't match up. Check this out. What if I didn't have them? So I took all the ampersands off. So everything's going to be passed by value. What's going to happen? I'm going to be changing all the copies, right? But not the originals. Right? So radius was right. I read that in. But then all the others, some just happened to come out to be 0, but then like the area and the sphere surface area had garbage values in there. So I changed the copies. I didn't change the originals. So that's why I need to pass them all by reference. I got to put all those back in. So does that make sense? So these are important memory concepts. And you'll find that a lot of what we're doing in these computer programming classes is revolves around memory concepts, like, how are things stored, right? They're stored in variables. But then later on, when we start talking about arrays and classes and structs and stuff like that, it's all about how is it organized and how is it stored in memory. And how, if we sort something, how does that work? All right, questions about that? Hey, just for the heck of it, we could also write a separate little function to get the input. There's only one thing of input here, so it's kind of it's not a big deal. But sometimes you might have more than one input value to get. So let's do this. So come down here. This won't take long. Let's write a separate function. So put this maybe up before calcStuff. So void, and I'm going to name it getInput, like that. And I'm going to send in a double by reference. So we're going to send in the radius. And then cut and paste that the input lines here. So I'm going to take them out of main. So they're no longer in main. I'm going to put them down here. Like that. So get input, we're going to send in a double by reference, radius, and then enter the radius of a circle, cn radius. So that's no longer in main, it's down here in a separate function called get input. And then see if you can add the prototype and the call. Those should be pretty short, right? And void, the prototype would just be void get input. You're sending a double by reference. You can put the name radius in there if you want to. That's all there is to it. And then to call that, call it before you call calcStuff. Get input and send in the radius. Let me know if I need to go to a different place. And that's how most if not all of our programs in this course kind of work. You've got your input, you do some processing, right, or some calculations or something, and then you output your results. So we kind of took those three things and put them in separate functions. The order of the prototypes or what? No, the prototypes can be in whatever order that you want them, and the function definitions can be in whatever order. That doesn't really matter at all either. It's the order of the calls that determines which order they get done. So there, you definitely want to do get input before you call calcStuff, right? All right, I'm going to stop the video. I think that's all we need on that one.